We are live, Dale.
Thank you. I had to close the blinds here. They blinding me. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the March 22nd, 2021 special commissioners meeting. I'll convene the commissioners meeting, and with the opening ceremonies and the Pledge of Allegiance, if everybody will stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
with justice for all. Everybody will sit, have a moment of silence for all our military personnel out there defending us, and for everybody that's having a problem with the COVID issue. Thank you all very much. I would accept a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Bauer,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jazinski. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against, say nay. Any abstention? Ashley, unanimous. We'll move right into public comment. Ashley, do you have people other than Del Dot available for public comment?
I do believe there are other individuals. The first one we have is Jay Martin.
Mr. Martin, we see the top of your head. There we go. Mr. Martin, if you give your name and your relationship to the town and your address.
Yes, my name is Jay Martin, and we own a house at 2 Jersey Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. You have 3 minutes. Go right ahead, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Do you just want me to comment on what's going on?
Yes, sir. That's what the 3 minutes is for. It's not actually a question and answer session. It's a comment session. You're allowed to say anything you would like.
Well, I think it's outrageous of what's going on in Delaware. They could have put those poles anywhere. They could have put them on Route 1 or anywhere. They didn't have to be on the beach. And it's a damn shame that it's happening this way. I don't know if we're going to be able to change it, but hopefully we can. And that's the only comment I have. I support the town.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. We appreciate it. Ashley, we'll move on to the next comment.
Next looks like Louis DeBaca.
Mr. DeBaca.
Yes. Hello.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being online. Please, you have 3 minutes, and we didn't lose you, did we, Mr. DeBaca?
Nope, I'm still
Oh,
here.
there you are.
Yep.
Okay, good. You moved on my screen there. You jumped over. So you have 3 minutes to say anything you wish about the subject.
Certainly. Yeah. First of all, again, thank you for the
Okay.
opportunity.
And are you a homeowner in town, Mr. DeBaca?
Yes, up on Chesapeake.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I think that I want to quote one of our public servants in Mayor Cook's newsletter the other day. He said, that if we had our choice, the town would not allow any new pole placements. And I think that on Chesapeake and Carolina, we certainly do still have that choice. And I would certainly urge you to not vote for the DelDOT agreements, because it seems as though that's an attempt to paper over a situation which actually would give the town the ability to not move forward with those particular polls. It'd be great if we could, if we had the opportunity to stand up to these companies on all of the other streets, and I understand that there's legal impediments there. But it seems strange to me that we would be in a situation where we'd actually create the legal impediment to doing the right thing, at least on the few streets that we're still able to. The mayor in his newsletter also, I think, mentioned that this is a scenario that's being played out throughout the Delaware beach towns. And I think that we need to certainly look to the successes of some of our neighbors to the degree that we haven't been able to block some of the poles on some of the streets, that we take aggressive action to make sure that we minimize the impact of those poles, whether aesthetically or otherwise. And I know that that's something that you guys have been looking at, and I really appreciate the care with which the commission has been proceeding on that. So again, thank you. This is an opportunity to not have to bow down to these companies and to have a little bit more of independence for us in the town. And I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Ashley, is there anybody else?
Next, we have Dr. Lorena Chambers.
Timber?
Chambers?
Oh, Chambers, I'm sorry. Dr. Chambers, you there?
Hi,
Hi, doctor.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can't see you at the moment, but we can hear you. There you are. Thank you, Dr. Chambers. You're welcome. 3-minute comment time. Say whatever you please about this.
Great, thank you so much. I am, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, there's a delay somehow.
Well, if you turn down your YouTube volume.
That's what's going on. Okay, how about I just, oh. Oh. Okay,
No problem. Can you hear us all right now?
I can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my goodness, thank you, technology, right? I want to thank you all for pulling together on this day, but also for your service, because I can honestly understand that you are serving here because of your love of Dewey Beach. And this is why we're calling in as well. And Dewey, my understanding, even though we purchased here 5-6 years ago, we are really excited to be part of Dewey. We're in fact on Chesapeake Street as well. We're going to be affected by this poll. And I really just want to share the notion that there is an opportunity here for you all to do what many citizens think is the right thing. It is not to keep services away from everyone or people going to the beach because of 5G. It is actually this very gray area that was explained, I believe, in the last meeting, where the agreement was that you all had, for lack of a better word, not necessarily ownership, but you certainly had jurisdiction over this area. And DelDOT figured out that, oh, Dewey Beach is special and different, and we didn't do our due diligence. So they're trying to come up and fill that gap. So I honestly, first, thank you very much for your service, but two, I hope that you do the right thing and actually vote against the DelDOT agreement to fill that gap and actually show that there is an opportunity for local leadership, local politics to be representative of not only the will of the people, but the will of the homeowners, the people who come to visit, all of us here. And I know that many of us came from other places, but we want to enjoy Dewey Beach as much as we have in the past. And those poles are so egregious visually. It is just shocking, as you all have seen. And I'm really sorry that this actually won't or can apply to other streets, although the poles are already up. But I'm hoping that at this point we're able to mitigate what's happening here. So I'm not sure if there are many other streets. I believe there's maybe 2 or 3, but I do hope that you vote against it. And also want to, my last point is, should be an investigation as to how that lack of communication occurred between our representatives that frankly, many of us are organizing to vote them out of office because I don't think they represented us very well. There is some type of an agreement, either verbal or maybe some other way, between the lobbyists of these utilities, well, they're not utilities, but of these organizations and companies vis-a-vis Lopez, and I'm trying to find the other person as well. But their lack of communication with you all has not been honorable. And so I think it's your opportunity to do the right thing, do the honorable thing, and actually correct that. So I would hope that you would take many of our comments and hopefully vote against it. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Chambers. Is that all?
I believe so. Do you have any questions for me?
No, unfortunately, it's a comment section, not a question and answer section.
Okay.
But we really do appreciate your comments. And you're on Chesapeake also?
I am on Chesapeake right at the end. I mean, there's only there's a handful of us at Sea Strand, but hopefully a mighty powerful handful.
Thank you, Doctor. We really appreciate your comments.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Sanders, is there anybody else in the waiting room?
Yes, next we have Stephen Bardzik.
Hello, sir. Is it Mr. Bartlett?
No, it's Mr. Bardzik, Steve Bardzik. I have,
Oh, Bardzik, I apologize, sir. It's
No.
my hearing, not your problem, my problem.
not a problem at all. As you know, we're residents at Sea Strand, Unit B11 in 4 Sea Strand Court. Others have spoken much more eloquently than I on the details of this entire issue. Once again, I'd like to reinforce that we applaud your efforts, but we are most interested in opposing the potential polls, especially at Chesapeake Street, but certainly Carolina and the rest of them. I will defer the rest of my time and just say that we are adamantly opposed for all the reasons that have been set forth so eloquently before. I thank you very much.
Mr. Bardzik, where are you located in Dewey?
We are in Sea Strand Court, Unit B11.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We appreciate your comment. Appreciate all of you being involved.
Thank you all.
Ms. Sanders, is there anybody else?
Next we have Greg Turk.
Mr. Turk? Mr. Turk, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, absolutely. You have 3 minutes to make any comments you would like to make.
Okay, is my video on there?
Yes, sir.
There I am. There we go.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm trying to get my face more so you see more than just my nose up here.
Yes,
So-
sir.
Anyway,
And if you'll tell us your full name and where you're located, sir.
yeah, Greg Turk on Chesapeake Street.
Okay?
So I got to start off by saying I agree with everything the previous residents have stated and agree in voting no to the Del Dot agreement. I also appreciate the commissioner's efforts on this, but I strongly urge you to continue to be very aggressive against the telecom companies in Tilson and so on. They don't have our best interests at heart. We all know that, and we need to be as vigilant against them as possible. I'm not against having more technology, but it can be done in better, swifter ways. In addition to that, I kind of have 3 comments. So first one is right of way and pole placement and the pole type. As I understand it, telecom companies want Dewey Beach approval to place poles beyond the end of the street's ocean side, which is outside the Del Dot right of way, excuse me. While altering placement of poles within the right of way may be challenging, placement of the poles outside the right of way is as my understanding, is within the control of the town. And given this, why is the town even considering allowing placement of the poles outside the right of way, which further clutters the landscape? What benefit to the town and residents is there in doing this? Why do we give these companies more areas to plant poles when we don't want any of them in the first place? There are plenty of co-location options which are way less objectionable. For example, what I've seen in Rehoboth, they've done actually a fairly good job from what I've seen so far in locating poles and having less objectionable 11-foot tall poles installed instead of these 35-foot poles with larger equipment on top of them. Second one, comment is additional telecom companies. Right now, as I understand, we're only dealing with Verizon and Tilson with their 15 or so poles. What are we going to do when AT&T and T-Mobile come knocking and want to put in their own poles? Are the number of poles going to triple? And where are those poles going to go? Are we going to have 3 poles at the end of each of the streets? That's, that'd be horrible. Third thing is outside telecom expert involvement, I'll say. What specialists has the town utilized to help fight this situation? Or are we just trying to do it all by ourselves? That is the end of my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shook. We appreciate it. And honestly, I can say we do appreciate your comments and all the comments from everybody. Thank you very much for staying involved. Ashley, is there anybody else?
Next, we have Miriam Tabrizi.
Tabrizi?
I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Miriam Tabrizi, good afternoon. You're connecting now. How are you, Mr. Tabrizi?
Good. How are you?
Welcome back to the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. You have 3 minutes to comment. Give your
Okay.
name and where you're located.
So my name is Mariam Tabrizi. I am an owner in the Perch on 16 Dagsworthy Avenue, unit number 11. And I wanted to thank you, Mayor Cook, all the Dewey Beach commissioners, the town managers, for all your work on this issue. I know we're all working to come to a resolution that we all can live with. So I know Joanne Fabrizio had spoken last time for our community, and I'm speaking on behalf of our community and also as an owner in the Perch against these polls, reiterating a lot of what everybody else is saying in terms of, people are on the beach maximum of 3 months out of the year, June, July, and August, and why we're putting these poles close to the ocean, close to the beach for that short period of time does not make sense when majority of the activity and business and population is located along Route 1 for majority of the year. And that's where service should be or needs to be, not on the beach. And again, we're really destroying our beach view, property value views, the beauty of our small town. And so I strongly object to having these poles located near the ocean. If we have Tilson or Verizon come in and put poles, where does that stop? So if other providers want to come in and put poles, it seems to be more of a free-for-all, very concern for us as a community and me as an owner. So I'm just against the poles, trying to figure out and understand all the situation of whatever else we can do to bring them back to Route 1 where the populated area is and not have them destroy our ocean. So I wanted to thank you for all your work on this and again, strongly object to having these destroy our pristine view and peaceful view of the ocean and our beachfront.
Thank you, Mr. Tabrizi. Thank you very much. I appreciate you not only being involved, but staying involved.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sanders, anybody else in the waiting room?
That is everyone for public comment. The only others we have are the individuals that are with us from Del Dot.
Okay, Commissioner, did you want to bring Del Dot in now, or do you want to wait till you have questions, or? Go ahead,
It's Dave.
Mr.
I'd like to see
Dixon.
him. I'd like to see him. I'd like to see them come in. Sure.
Yeah, let's bring them in then, Ms. Sanders. I appreciate that, Mr. Dzinski. Mr. Semo, you're online right now. Are you going to be on video?
So no, unfortunately, I don't have a web camera. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I feel like I'm the only dinosaur in the bunch. Now I know I'm not. Well, we have Mr. Feaster and Mr. Semo, both from Del Dot Online. And what we'll do is we'll start our discussion, and then I would hope you might be able to answer any questions that we have or might have.
Sure.
Okay. And I noticed some background noise, people talking in the background. If people are careful about that, what they're saying and doing in the background, please let your people know where you're located. Okay, thank you very much. We have one item on the agenda today, and that's discuss and possibly vote to approve the supplement to the Town of Dewey Beach Street and Beach Maintenance Agreement with Del Dot. I just make a very short comment, and then I'll open it up to the others to make a comment, and then we'll open it up for any motion that a commissioner wants to make. This has been so that everybody watching understands. All the commissioners have taken this very seriously. All the staff in town hall have taken it very seriously. We do not like, well, we can bluntly say we do not like to have additional telephone poles, or what's called telephone poles, maybe telecommunication poles in the town of Dewey Beach, especially along the ocean front, along the street side of the dune line. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we handle it properly and legally, and that we do what is right for the town and for the state, and follow all laws, both state and federal, and follow our new town ordinance also. It's not easy to do that. There's multiple facets to this argument, both pros and cons, and we want the town to understand that we're doing our best to do what is right and proper for the town. I'm gonna go down the line with commissioners and let them have comments, and then go back down the line and ask them to have any questions, and then bring in Mr. Semo and Mr. Feaster as we question. So I want to get comments first. Mr. Jasinski.
Well, my comment was actually questions for Mr. Fiesler and Semo, so I'll just defer any comments until I can ask them questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stevens. Mr. Stevens.
I would also like to defer until we hear from Del Dot, please.
Okay, all right. Mr. Bauer.
Yeah, I mean, the questions that people were expressing to us, I mean, obviously it's overwhelming that people are against having these poles on their blocks. And, there's, I guess, some misconceptions of that these poles could just go anywhere and work. I would hope Tilson or Verizon or somebody can weigh in. For some reason, they don't attend these meetings, but, I think they need to explain to everybody why these aren't all up on Route 1. Yeah, I know we've talked to them, but I don't think the public understands that, they're telling us it doesn't work that way. So I don't know if Del Dot can answer those questions. Eric, I'm not sure, but I know you've been in a lot of those meetings. Maybe you can address that in some of your comments.
Okay, then is that all, Mr. Bauer?
That's it.
Mr. Persinger, any comments before we go to the questions?
Yeah, can you hear me now? I tried to take my phone off mute.
Yeah, so we can hear you.
Okay, good. Well, I'll just make a few comments, and maybe that will focus a little bit of the discussion now. I mean, what we have before us is an amendment to an existing agreement that we've had in place since the 1980s. And in essence, what that original agreement did was that it provided all of the maintenance responsibility, or ceded all the maintenance responsibility for the jurisdiction of the town, except for a couple of streets, ceded that authority to Del Dot. And so what Del Dot is proposing to do now is to give us the sole permitting authority with respect to wireless facilities on all of those streets. But there's kind of an unconnected piece, at least in my mind, it's kind of an unconnected piece at the end, which is the change in paragraph 11, which talks about defining beachlands. And it's not characterized in terms of buying right of way. It does talk about an 8-foot section from the end of the pavement eastward, but it doesn't really define what that is. I mean, the practical effect of that may be to designate that as right of way, but it's not clear. So I think we need to talk a bit more about what the effects are of paragraph 11. And I think with respect to the sole permitting authority, I think, and this is based in part on discussions with our town attorney, I think in part by passing the ordinance that we did and along with the design standards, we have in effect asserted our ability or authority to regulate in this area. So, you know, it's not clear that signing an agreement which gives us sole permitting authority, it actually increases our authority. It may actually provide us with a little better position to argue against those who want to say that we don't have authority to regulate in that area. But so I think those are issues we need to talk about a bit more and get DelDOT's perspective on. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to go back to Commissioner Jasinski, who had a question and ask, I believe he was going to ask Mr. Semo the question, but Mr. Jasinski, go ahead and ask your question to whichever one you want.
Well, so my question is both legal and policy wise, and it's along the lines of what Commissioner Persinger was talking about, which is I want to understand the reason and the basis for the shift east and west of the right of way from the end of the pavement to 8 feet from the end of the pavement. I want to understand both kind of the policy reason for that, as well as the legal basis of asking for that.
So it's Eric Semo. So in general, the 1983 agreement sets up what the maintenance responsibilities of the department are going to be within the municipality of Dewey. So that is generally speaking 8 foot from the edge of pavement. However, the 83 agreement gets into the term beachlands, but it never defines what beachlands are. And so what this amendment is doing is carrying that 8 foot offset from the edge of pavement along the sides of the road to the end of the street too, to provide definition on what maintenance will be at the end of the street, because right now under the 83 agreement, it's not defined.
Mr. Jasinski, does that answer your question?
Well, the only question I would have additionally of DelDOT is outside of that 1983 agreement, is there any other governing document about where the actual right-of-way ends for DelDOT?
So I do not know. I can tell you that the maintenance responsibility, that 8 foot area is not right of way. That is strictly what our maintenance area is based on the agreement. Right of way is further out than 8 foot. So the public space that's considered right of way is much larger than 8 foot past the edge of pavement.
Okay.
Anything further, Mr. Jasinski?
Not right now, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stevens, I'm going to go to you next. Your mic is on.
Mr. Semo, I don't know that you answered Commissioner Jasinski's second part of the question of the basis as to why. Or did I miss that part?
So
is why just establishing the definition of beachland?
So why we put the 8 foot at the end of the roadway?
Yeah.
So yes, that because the 1983 agreement just brought up the term beachland, but it never defined what beachland was if you read through it. So our interpretation has always been that our maintenance responsibility of 8 foot off the edge of the pavement would continue whether you're on the edge of the road or the end of the road. So we were just using this to clarify that. So that's the why. It's just clarification that we DelDOT are only going to maintain 8 foot past the edge of the pavement, whether it's the side of the road or the end of the road.
Anything else, Mr. Stevens?
No, I don't have anything right now.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Persinger.
Well, I guess maybe it's just a matter of opportunity that DelDOT's taking, but you know, if the agreement has been fine for the last 38 years, why now? But why make this change now? Is there some problem that's being addressed by making that change? And I'm interested also in your comment about, Mr. Simo's comment about the right-of-way extending beyond 8 feet. I'm not sure what you meant by that.
So I think there's confusion on two terms here. Maintenance responsibility is got nothing to do with what the actual right of way is. So the agreement, the 1983 agreement, set up what maintenance responsibilities are going to be, but it doesn't dictate what the rights of way are for each of the roads within town or anywhere else. So two separate items. Unfortunately, I don't have information where I can provide insight on what the right of way widths are for the various roads. But generally speaking, if we were on a DelDOT road, a lot of times it's going to be like a 50-foot right of way or something like that, measured from right of way line to right of way line. So in terms of this town agreement, we were specifically trying to outline what the maintenance responsibilities are, to the effect that the 83 agreement specifically stated that though our maintenance responsibility is only 8 foot off the edge of the roadway, that DelDOT shall have the authority to permit all utilities within the full right of way. And so I think it's very important that everybody understands maintenance and right of way are two separate things. So the other piece of that, yes, the beachland side, it is an opportunity for us to just clarify the maintenance responsibilities by carrying through what we're doing for the remainder of the road. I can tell you that the conversation that has ensued as a result of the wireless piece makes it seem like there is a lot of confusion with that term beachlands. So we were doing our best to make it a little better defined moving forward, because there's been a lot of questions to the fact that at the end of the pavement, it's been stated that everything past the end of the pavement going towards the ocean side is the town's. Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't do any maintenance from the end of the road heading towards the ocean, which isn't consistent with the remainder of the road. So again, we were taking this opportunity to clarify that.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
You said you wouldn't do any maintenance from the end of the road.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jasinski, wait one second. Mr. Persinger, did you finish?
But go ahead, let David ask this question. You can come back to me.
Okay, I'll come back to you, but please from now on, don't, until we finish everybody's questions, don't bring up a second question. Mr. Jasinski, go right ahead.
You said for purposes of doing maintenance at the end of the road, I get the maintenance that DelDOT does on the north and south sides of the roads that run into the beach, but what maintenance does DelDOT do at the east end of the roads that dead end at the beach?
I don't know specifically what we do, but that 8-foot buffer gives us the ability to do things like if there was road patching or something like that, that's what that 8-foot buffer allows us to work within, versus if it stops right at the edge of the pavement, then that limits the ability for maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Jasinski. We'll go back to Mr. Persinger. You want to finish your questions?
Well, yeah, the question I had was, if we were to sign this agreement, would we have permit authority over that 8-foot section that extends eastward from the edge of the pavement for the wireless facilities?
Yes, so the intent would be that you would have, Dewey would have sole permitting authority even within any of DelDOT's maintenance areas when it comes to wireless. So that is the true intent of this amendment. And really it's really there because right now there's been a lot of question and concern with having multiple permit authorities, meaning DelDOT and Dewey in this case. And it sounds like there's been a lot of confusion and frustration voiced over that. So this is the opportunity for Dewey to be that sole point, especially since you do have the ordinance in place, so that then there's not any confusion with DelDOT being part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Persinger, is that all?
Yeah, I do not have another question at this time, no.
Okay, Commissioner Bauer.
Yeah, and this is for Eric or Ken. Can you explain how DENREC is getting involved in some of this permitting now.
So my understanding is that DENREC has, I'll call it, some coastal requirements, being so close to the ocean. So with that, the companies are required, if they're within that proximity or going past that line, for lack of a better term, then they need some sort of approval from DENREC to be able to move forward. And from the DelDOT side, generally speaking, in our process, just because we authorize something on the permitting side doesn't mean that it's a blessing that everybody hasn't. They need to do their due diligence with all other necessary agencies. So that's where, them working with DENREC would come in.
So the one we received last week or the week before, where they wanted to go up onto the dune with the pole. There's really no hard and fast line, legal interpretation of where one jurisdiction begins and the other ends.
Not from my side. And I don't know if you have any additional insight there.
I mean, we're trying to write ordinances, which are laws that are going to, try to mitigate this whole issue. And without knowing that, I mean, I think we need to get legal guidance on this kind of stuff, or else we're just wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, I mean, I know DENREC has their requirements, and they would probably be the best entity to talk directly to for more information on that.
Okay.
Well, you finished, Mr. Bauer?
Yes, I am.
I think I've gotten every round of everyone except myself. Mr. Simo, good afternoon. Mr. Feaster, good afternoon. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate you being here. I know it's hard sometimes putting yourself on the line when you can't talk face to face with people, but this is the best we can do considering the situation we're in. If anybody else has background noise, please stop talking in the background or mute your connection. Thank you. How about, I have a question that seems to be important to me, and I think is important to the situation. And what I know the beachlands are the property of the state, but what department has authorization from the end of the roads where the sand starts through the dunes and onto the beach? Every year that when we want to shovel the sand back up onto the dunes from the end of the roads, when it begins to cover the road, we go to DENREC to receive permission to have, in effect, we're altering the sand layout. Where is it that it says somewhere, and Mr. Feaster might know, that who actually owns the sand part of the beachland from the end of the roads out?
Yeah, I believe that would fall under DENREC's jurisdiction. In my mind, this 8-foot section, that's my primary focus, quite honestly, especially with the permitting. And I can't say for certain that DelDOT's authority wouldn't extend beyond that, but I see it essentially within that 8 feet is really what we're focusing on here, because the 83 agreement does provide for DelDOT to provide maintenance for 8 feet from the edge of the roadway. Beyond that, I would expect that's probably within DENREC's jurisdiction would be my expectation, but I can't tell you that 100% just off the top of my head, unfortunately.
I got you. Thank you very much. Mr. Simo, any comment?
No, I agree with Ken. I would assume that it would be DENREC, but I can't say for sure.
Just the second question for either Mr. Simo or Mr. Feaster, doesn't matter which answers it. We have an ordinance when it comes to placement of these telecommunications poles and placement of small cell wireless. And therefore, in turn, the state tells us also include Wi-Fi. I asked this question the other day of DelDOT when we had a phone meeting. Would that ordinance or enforcement of that ordinance be affected in any way, whether we sign this agreement or don't, when it comes to state streets and town streets?
So I'll take it first, and Ken can jump in if I missed anything. So I'm going to say that I don't believe so. The only thing the amendment does is makes it a little bit cleaner so that there's not two permitting authorities within the municipality. So, we're getting into a lot of, or at least we have been getting into a lot of confusion where companies are reaching out to DelDOT knowing that they're state maintained roadways and maybe coming to the town later or vice versa. And so I think the amendment would really clear up that authority and everything would be able to funnel to the town to ensure that your ordinance is met.
That's right. At DelDOT's position, and Eric, you can correct me if I'm misstating anything, DelDOT's position up to this point is that because of that area being subject to state maintenance, that the state permitting process would by default apply as well. So with the proposed supplement to the 83 agreement would clarify for maintenance purposes as far as 8-foot stretch eastward of the road, again, for maintenance purposes, but again, pull DelDOT out of the permitting process that relates to wireless communications. Essentially at this point, again, DelDOT's position is that DelDOT is part of the permitting process, just as it would for any other wireless facilities, but that does not take the town out of it because it is still within town limits. So those communications companies should be getting permitted through both DelDOT and the town. So the supplement essentially pulls DelDOT out of that process. And as Eric said, I think he hit the nail on the head, is that the intention here is for that wireless permitting to fall squarely within the town. And whether this supplement gets signed off or not, in my opinion, I believe that the town ordinance would still apply, and it's up to the town, though, to enforce this. DelDOT can't really enforce the town's ordinances against the communications companies. But yeah, those ordinances should still apply.
Thank you, sir. There seems to be an impression in town, and I'm not saying that it's right, wrong, or in between, but it seems to be an impression in the town that the state wants to enforce the state and federal laws, and that ends up easily permitting people to come in, companies to come in, providers to come in and put up telecommunications poles. And that the town wants to enforce their ordinance, but that seems to be at odds with the intent or at odds with the what the state is leaning towards. The state tends to lean towards allowing the poles in if they meet minimum standard, and the town tends to lean towards enforcing a more strict standard. Do either of you have a comment on that?
So I would say that generally speaking, that's probably somewhat true because the department is tasked with treating these wireless providers as any other utility that's in the right of way. That's one of the first things Delaware code, Delaware law says, is that these companies are not utilities, but they're to be treated as utilities. So we have to hold them to the standards of any other public utility company that's operating within a DelDOT or state maintained right of way. And so our charge is for public safety. Aesthetics is not something that we are focused on with utility companies. And so in a lot of cases with municipalities, there's more attention drawn to the aesthetic side of things, naturally so, but that is not something that we hold utility companies to. So it's not something we're allowed to hold wireless providers to.
Mr. Stevens, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, real quick, because I'm going back and forth on this whole issue. And Mr. Simo, without it, right now, does DelDOT have the right to put these wireless poles at the end of the streets?
So in my opinion, it falls within our permitting purview to review and approve, reject, whatever, any permits that fall within the area that is right of way of these streets. So my answer is yes. But that being said, if the town has their ordinance, then the town can fall back on their ordinance. And if there's any DENREC requirements that say it can't be there, then all of that stuff applies. So unfortunately, our process can't take into account all those other pieces. So you end up getting competing permitting processes, for lack of a better term.
So by us agreeing to this amendment or signing this amendment, does the town of Dewey Beach take back full control of the permitting process of these wireless poles and utility companies, except for Highway 1, Route 1 and 1A?
Correct. So it would be for any wireless submissions, then Dewey would be the sole entity, at least between DelDOT and Dewey. Dewey would be the sole entity responsible for the permitting piece. We would not be involved with it. That being said, I just want to clarify, it's strictly for wireless. So if it was electrical lines where Delmarva Power was coming in and performing work, they would still need to go through our permitting process. So this is
And just for
specifically
clarity,
wireless.
the 17 poles that are already here, those came through a DelDOT approval process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you're saying once we sign this amendment, that would not happen again?
That is correct.
But wouldn't, this is Ken Peters speaking, it wouldn't happen without, of course, town approval. Again, this would put this squarely within the town's permitting authority and not DelDOT. I just want to provide one further clarification as well. You mentioned about town being the sole authority, but there was also some discussion too, that there are some circumstances where DENREC becomes involved, and DelDOT, of course, wouldn't take a position on DENREC's involvement in any of that. They'd have to speak for themselves on those points. But as far as the proposed supplement to the agreement, that's exactly right. It essentially just says DelDOT would be stepping out of it altogether as it relates to wireless permit.
Mr. Stevens,
I guess that's where I guess that's where I'm confused. If we take full permitting process over with the signing of the amendment, then what does it matter about the 8 feet right away?
That still provides for maintenance responsibilities.
So it doesn't really do anything on the wireless front. It's just clarifying DelDOT's future
On the maintenance
maintenance
piece. Okay.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah, because the original agreement wasn't real clear on that. So the intention was just to provide clarity so that in the future, 20, 30 years down the road, if other questions come up with, whether it be other concerns about maintenance and where DelDOT does and does not maintain, or other future technology, quite honestly, that might come through, that we can provide some clarity that folks who have to deal with this in the future wouldn't have to be asking the same questions. It would be clearly spelled out within the four corners of the agreement.
Mr. Stevens, does that cover your?
It does. I just have one question. Are there more permits that have been submitted that we are unaware of to DelDOT?
No.
Okay.
So we have not received any additional permits in Dewey town limits.
Okay.
But right now it's just Tilson and Verizon, and you have approved those permits. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And whether we are brought in or left out of the permitting process or full control of the permitting process, that would not change, if I understand correctly, you said that would not change the fact that you've already given permits to those.
That's
two
correct.
companies.
So yeah, that's correct. So from DelDOT's standpoint, those permits have been authorized and we are not able to rescind authorization, even if the responsibilities for permitting change moving forward.
Okay, Mr. Bauer, you had your hand up?
Yeah. So Tilson being a contractor, what's their restrictions? I mean, obviously they're not a carrier. And the 1603 definition, can you explain to me how they fit that or they don't fit that?
So when Tilson made submissions to us for permitting, they came in and they are establishing, or at least they've told us they are establishing a Wi-Fi network. And by establishing a Wi-Fi network that they are going to make available, then they meet the definitions of a wireless provider. And
who are they providing it for?
My understanding is they are going to be providing it for the public.
So they have to have a customer in order to do that, correct? Isn't that the law?
If they are issuing it as a free service that you can just log on like any open Wi-Fi, then
Right.
It meets that.
So I could come in and say, hey, I'm a wireless provider too. I want to put a pole up. What stops me?
This
As
is,
long,
if I can step in for just a moment, the definition for wireless provider includes wireless infrastructure provider or wireless services provider. So,
Right.
I'm wrong, but I think that they really fall under then the infrastructure provider part of that definition.
So wireless infrastructure provider means any person, including a person authorized to provide telecommunications service in a state that builds or installs wireless communications transmission equipment, facilities, or wireless support structures pursuant to the agreement that the wireless provider set up. I haven't seen any of Tilson's agreements. Does anybody else?
Is that addressed, who's that addressed
Yeah, I
to?
mean, that's for anybody. I mean, if they provided, do they have customers or they're just putting poles up, hoping they'll get a customer someday?
so when we went through, there were different aspects of the agreement of the Delaware Code of the definitions that you're reading from. And when we reviewed the Wi-Fi scenario, they met in a lot of different instances. So for instance, wireless facility, the Wi-Fi meets that definition, which I believe is 1603 21A.
22 and 23.
And then the small wireless facility, again, they fall within the definition of a small wireless facility.
Right.
Wireless service, their service is being offered wirelessly, though it uses an unlicensed spectrum, but that is allowed under that definition. And so wireless infrastructure provider, they are installing wireless antennas and they're offering that service out to the community. And so while they may not, at least from what's been described to us, they may not be in direct agreement with a provider, they're offering a service to the public is how they've defined
So this
it
is,
to
I
us.
think, where the state, and there's a disconnect here because they were supposed to have a customer before they did anything as a contractor. But now you're telling me that's not necessarily true. They can say they want to get customers. Am I
So
understanding that right under section 22?
Mr. Bauer, let him finish answering your question there.
So if they're telling us they are going to be offering that service out without any strings, then by effect, by offering that service to the public, then that is the customer. The public is the customer at that point.
All right. And then how is this being offered to the public?
That I don't know. I can't answer that question.
Right. If I called Tilson up and said, hey, I guess we have free Wi-Fi in town here for everybody. How do we get it? I mean, I'm trying to be a jerk about it, but I mean, if they have customers or they're planning on trying to get some.
Mr. Simo, I guess what you've said is that there is no answer for that question.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm answering the question the way the commissioner would like it to be answered. So that's the best I have.
All right.
Right. I understand. Mr. Dzinski, I think you had your hand up too. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Go ahead, sir.
I have a comment and then a proposal. It's clear to me that the situation with the 8 feet at the end of our roads that run into the beach lands is unclear. And it's also quite clear to me that the most objectionable poles that have been put up or are permitted are in this same area. So with that in mind, because things are so unclear, I motion that we resolve that the commissioners direct the town solicitor and the town manager to modify and accept the MOU with the following changes. The extension of Del Dot right-of-way and maintenance by 8 feet east and west of the pavement shall not be included, and other clerical recommendations made by the town solicitor regarding the proposed MOU be made.
Mr. Dzinski, I know it's a long motion, but I would ask you to repeat that motion so we can all hear it clearly and Ashley can get it down.
Okay.
Go ahead,
The
sir.
MOU is be it resolved that the commissioners direct the town solicitor and town manager to modify and accept the MOU with the following changes. The extension of Del Dot right-of-way and maintenance by 8 feet east and west of the pavement shall not be included, and other clerical recommendations made by the town solicitor regarding the proposed MOU also be made.
Everybody's heard the motion. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
It's seconded, put forth by Mr. Jazinski, seconded by Mr. Persinger. Mr. Jazinski and then Mr. Persinger, if you want to give comments first.
Sure. So the primary thing in this MOU that could potentially negatively affect the town is this 8-foot issue. The other stuff is minor and clerical that's been brought up. A streamlined permitting process could work better for us. I think there's a distinct possibility that by only having to go to the town for permits in town on these streets, that could work better for us. And, frankly, given there were poles put up in this 8-foot area, I am extremely reticent to change anything with the permitting process. I don't know which member was speaking, but one of the members from DelDOT, talked about DENREC's authority over the area beyond the pavement. And that's very, very concerning to me if some of these poles have gone in areas with DENREC's authority. However, DelDOT does seem to want to get this MOU done, and I want to be a good partner to DelDOT.
Thank you very much. Ashley, did you say there's another person that Mr. Johnson from DelDOT has just joined us? And we're in the process of discussing a motion that's on the floor. Is there, Mr. Persinger, your comments on the motion?
Yeah, I do have some comments. If you look at the 1983 agreement, it talks about right-of-way. It defines right-of-way as the area along the sides of the travel lane. It doesn't talk at all about the area at the ends of the street, and does not describe them in any way as being right-of-way. Now, that's not to say it's not right-of-way, and I'm not trying to challenge any of the reasons that DelDOT has offered for why they put forth this amendment, but I just think that the amendment as proposed does not clearly accomplish the kinds of objectives that they have described for us. The amendment in paragraph 11 only talks about this 8-foot section, doesn't define it as right of way. I'm not sure it's even specific in terms of talking about it just as a maintenance area. It's really only specific in terms of defining beachland, so that you're now drawing a specific line that would define the beachland. So if in fact the notion is to extend permitting authority, sole permitting authority for all areas of the right of way within town, I think it would need to be modified in a way to make that clear. So as currently configured, I think it would be unwise, or not in the town's best interest right now, to sign the memorandum as it is. In terms of Mr. Jazinski's motion, the only thing that's a little unclear to me is what he means by the various clerical suggestions, I guess, from our town attorney. I think we maybe should put something a little different in there. I'm not sure that there may be some other changes that in fact go beyond just something that's clerical. We may need some more substantive legal consideration and opinion from our town attorney about our position with respect to this. But in terms of the basic idea of getting sole permit authority, I think that might be a good idea. It does eliminate some confusion. It would certainly put us on the same footing as other municipalities are along the shore. Fenwick, Bethany, Rehoboth. I don't think DelDOT is involved in any of the permitting process that involves a town-maintained streets in those areas. So I think from that standpoint, it's potentially useful to have, even though it may not change substantially or at all, perhaps, our legal position. That's all my comments. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Bauer.
Yeah, sort of agreeing with both with Gary and David here on this. I mean, it's section 11, this beachlands definition. And that's, sort of the questions I was asking earlier is, DENREC's spot, our spot, Del Dot's jurisdiction. I think we have to have Fred put this together in such a way that we're going to encompass all of it, because if we say it's X, what prevents the carrier from going to DENREC and trying to get it put on someone else's? So I think if we can just, there's got to be a way we can pull that together in some legal terms that it accomplishes what everybody wants. I don't have a problem having the agreement, because given the choice, I'd rather have control of it versus not having control of it. But I think we have some work to do on the legal language that define this, not just with Del Dot and the state, but also with DENREC.
Is that all, Mr. Bauer?
That's it.
Mr. Stevens?
Yeah, I tend to agree with the other commissioners. I'd rather have control than not have control. And especially given how these polls have gone up and how our residents have reacted, this is not something that we wanted to have happen. And at least this will resolve any inconsistencies that we have with Del Dot. Now we'll have DENREC as a different fight potentially, but I also don't think it's going to be in their best interest to allow these poles to be erected on the dunes. So I do believe inserting section 4A and giving us control is the right thing to do. I do think that Del Dot was trying to do the right thing here in terms of clarifying section 11, understanding the beachlands. The only thing I want to make sure that I understand that by approving, as Commissioner Jasinski said it, just to be clear, those permits that have already been issued are live permits. There's nothing we can do about it, correct? So till we're from the state level, is there anything that we can do for the poles that have been approved but have not been erected yet?
I'm sorry, who was that question for?
To Eric Simo. To
Mr. Simo, go ahead.
So from our standpoint, we can't rescind or alter those permits. I'm not sure if from the town standpoint, there may be additional items that you guys could move forward with depending on the timing and the adopting of your ordinance and whatnot. But from our standpoint at Del Dot, we can't change anything with those.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, any other comments?
No other comments, Mr. Mayor.
I guess it's back to me then. First off, Mr. Persinger, Mr. Persinger, you had your
I had one additional comment. I just want to distinguish between this notion of sole permitting authority and control. I mean, by virtue of the fact that we have already passed an ordinance, we have already asserted our authority to regulate.
I think
control. We don't.
The last comment we got.
I just wanted to make that distinction.
No, we missed some of your comments.
I'm sorry?
We missed a few of your comments. Go back a couple sentences.
I'm driving through Baltimore. So I lose the signal a little bit. I'm just distinguishing between having sole permitting authority versus having control. I think, but by virtue of the fact that we have already passed an ordinance that includes design standards, we already have a measure of control. We already have a permitting authority. We have a basis on which to turn down a permit application. But we don't have sole control. And what this amendment would do would give us the sole permitting authority. I think that's a distinction that we ought to recognize at this point as we move forward. It's not a matter of us not having control right now. It's having sole permitting authority.
Understand. Mr. Bauer, did you have your hand up again?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Then that again comes back to me. I too, as a couple of the commissioners have mentioned, I too think it would be best if we had what we commonly call sole authority over the permitting for this. I agree with what Mr. Stevens, Mr. Bauer said, and think it would be best if somehow in the final agreement that we sign has that there, because I don't think anybody but the town has all of its best interest at heart. I don't think, with that said, I don't think that DENREC or our representatives intended any harm to us. I just think we found more issues that we've gone deeper into the weeds, and we found more issues that we feel are negative right now for the town. I, in respect, I have a lot of respect for what the state and the representatives have put forth, but I have a problem with Section 11. And I think most of the commissioners have a problem with Section 11, and I think it needs to be rewritten. So it's my intent to vote for the amendment that the motion that Mr. Jazinski has put forth and Mr. Persinger has seconded. So if there's no other comments, is there any other comments from anybody? I know there were comments from our town manager and Mr. Johnson, who just came online, and there's one person in the waiting room to make comments, but the motion is on the floor. It has been seconded. We're properly moved. Mr. Bauer?
Yeah, just one quick comment, sort of echo what Gary said here. I mean, so everybody understands, we've had now for a few weeks, an ordinance in place, that restricts how these polls are going up. So it's not like, it's all in DelDOT's hands right now. But, Gary, thanks for bringing that up, because I'm not sure the public is aware that we've already passed one ordinance. Now, this is just a contractual agreement with the state that we need to have some better language with. That's my only comment.
Mr. Stevens, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, just a clarifying question. And this is more to the commissioners, or maybe it's to Eric Simo. While we do not, you had said there's other permits that have been issued while those poles have not been erected. By us having the ordinance already in place, we do still control where they will. And I'm sorry, again, that I use the word control all the time. We will still be able to decide where the future poles go, correct? And that they have to adhere to our aesthetics.
Well, I want to make a comment on that, Mr. Stevens. I think that's a good question. Our resolution that initiated all of this and ended up in an ordinance was passed, I believe, back in October. And we've had the comment from our attorney that we could justify saying that that's when we started it, and we warned everybody that we were going to pass this, and they were putting them up at their, I believe he said that they were putting them up at their own, don't know the word for it. In other words, they were taking it upon themselves, anything that came after that we were proposing a new ordinance. So that'll be interesting. Does any commissioner have any comment on that? On what Mr. Stevens asked? No comments, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Simo, do you have a comment on that?
So I would say it's within what the town feels your ability is, and what your attorney says your abilities are. So yeah, if you guys are comfortable with that, then from DelDOT's perspective, we've already issued them, and that doesn't preclude you guys from going in and having your own requirements on top of that. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Stevens, did that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Somewhat, but it looks like we'll have to see.
And like I say, unfortunately, there's a motion, or fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on which side you're on, there's a motion that's been properly seconded and being discussed and on the floor. And once we have a motion, the commissioners follow through with that before we go to any other comments, even though there are other people that might now be waiting. Mr. Jazinski, did you have one last comment that you wanted to make?
No, I did not.
I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand up.
Mr. Zolper did.
No, I know Mr. Zolper did, but he's not part of the commission. So, Mr. Bauer, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, just for clarity, so what we're voting on is to approve getting this to our town solicitor for additional language in Section 11?
Can you restate the question, Paul? You said the resolution is to do what?
What we're voting to approve or not approve is to pass this over, that Fred Townsend's going to change some language here in section 11?
Well, it's the town solicitor in conjunction with the town manager, right? Changes the MOU for the right of way and maintenance on the 8 feet east and west of the pavement, just completely eliminate that area being redefined. And then Fred had alluded to making other clerical things within the MOU, and we're authorizing him to do that as well.
Right. I just wanted to make clarity of what we're voting on.
Well, and then I want to ask a question. What happens after they come up with a possible solution to this?
My intent of the motion was that we're authorizing them to go ahead and execute the agreement with those changes in it. If for some reason they feel that we weren't clear, they could always send it back to us. But my intent with this is that they can make those changes, execute it, and then it's up to DelDOT whether DelDOT wants to accept the changes that they propose.
The commissioners, you understand the intent of the motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any other comments from any other commissioner? Mr. Persinger, you had your hand up.
Well, should we make it a little more specific? Are we talking about just deleting any change to?
We got deleting anything too.
Is in the earlier 1983 agreement? Is that the suggestion here?
You're going to have to restate it in full, Commissioner Persinger. I could not hear you.
My question is, in terms of making a change, are we just eliminating any change to paragraph 11? Is that the idea?
We are eliminating any change regarding right-of-way or maintenance east or west of the pavement, irrespective of whether it's in paragraph 11 or not.
Okay.
Mr. Persinger,
I think that's okay.
Okay.
I think that's okay.
All right. No other comments? I'll call the question. I'll call a roll. And if you want to give a statement while you're giving your answer, that's fine too. Mr. Jasinski, how do you vote?
I vote yes, since I think it's the best thing we can do overall in a bad situation.
Mr. Stevens, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Bauer, how do you vote?
I vote yes. I mean, I just still believe that, at the end of the day, we'd be better off having more control than less.
Mr. Persinger, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And it comes to me, I agree with Mr. Bauer. I think at the end of the day, that would be better off if we were the only jurisdiction that had authority over issuing the permits. I think we should angle in that direction. I have a problem with section 11. I think it should be reworded. And I have a problem with who may or may not own the sand to the east of the paved roadway. I still don't understand whether DENREC is the authority or DelDOT is the authority. So with that, I vote yes. It's unanimous. Ms. Sanders, the motion passed. I will ask any of the people because somebody from DelDOT just came on not too long ago. Anybody from DelDOT wants to make any further comment?
No, we appreciate your time and look forward to trying to work through any items with the amendment to the agreement.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Zolper, you had a comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and our friends from DelDOT. Thank you. So if we find that any of these poles are actually put in DENREC jurisdiction, because there seems to be some confusion, can we have them removed?
Who are you asking that question of?
Anybody from DelDOT?
So I think if it's within DENREC's jurisdiction, then it would fall back to DENREC to provide guidance on that path forward. So I would have to defer to them, unfortunately.
Okay. Ms. Sander, is there somebody in the public comment section right now?
Yes, we have Jeffrey Smith is waiting to make public comment.
Then we'll go on to public comment for Mr. Smith. Go ahead.
We already had public comment.
I know we did. I know we did, but we didn't have comment about this particular item, which we usually do. Go ahead, Ms. Sander. Mr. Smith, are you there? Mr. Smith, are you available? It says connecting to audio. Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Hi.
Your picture is at an angle.
Okay, let's see.
Just flip it twice and it should fix itself.
There we go. All right. Good to see you all. I wanted to.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, you have 3 minutes to give your name and your location or your
Sure.
building in town.
My name is Jeffrey Smith and I live at 30 C Strand.
Thank you, sir.
All right. We had a week's notice for this agreement to look at a significant agreement. A hearing was immediately held, that is 7 days. Now I've had about 70 seconds since a resolution just passed. We all agree that if we sign that original proposal by DelDOT, that would have been problematic, to put it mildly, according to your own town attorney. But now we're streamlining the process. Let's figure out what that means to us non-politicians out here. Just speaking plainly. You now have authority. Every one of you just about has told me that. You have authority now to review permits. What you've just done is taken out DelDOT, which means that the telecoms do not have to go to DelDOT and the town. They have to only go to you. And the town does not have the resources to do this. The town cannot take on 20 to 30 new poll applications. You can confirm that with the town manager, I'm sure, but this is impossible. Here's the thing. I've researched this, as you know, as much as any of you, if not.
Mr. Smith, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 minute. I think maybe you misunderstood. We didn't agree to let DelDOT or to force DelDOT out of the decision-making process. We've sent the agreement back to our town attorney and then back to DelDOT for possible changes.
Okay, well, let's comment. Nobody commented on, it was unanimous. So obviously this term of sole control or local control is all a misnomer. You have control now. The sole control, this is the legislation that came out of HR 189. You have no authority to turn down these permits except for, and you've said that at multiple meetings, we'll pull up the tapes, that you have no authority. Dewey will never be able to deny one of these permits, and we all know that. So having this false choice, just because the state senator wants this, will be called out. Do not do this. We want these telecoms to jump through 2 permits. When I apply for a debt on YouTube channel, it has a debt. I had to go to the county and I had to go to the town. That was not a problem. I had to go to Georgetown. Now you're allowing them to put up a poll for less effort than for me to apply for my deck. No way. This isn't happening. The commissioners are selling out. You're streamlining only for the telecoms because you've been asked by these telecom lobbyists that called me by accident and let their facts be known. So this streamlining about sole permit authority or control is just total. It's no more, it has no more citing than Mr. Simo's had when we asked him for the law.
Mr. Smith, you have half a minute left, sir.
All right, so let's not try to change the debate here. You have permitting authority. We want them to have the maximum. So let's be honest, this is Mother Nature. This is our beach. Thank you.
Is that it, sir?
That's it.
Thank you very much for staying involved and being part of the meeting. I appreciate it.
I'll be involved. I'll be involved.
Thank you, sir.
So will a lot of people.
Thank you, sir. So I guess, to sum up what we've done, we've sent back to our attorney the agreement in hopes that he, the town manager, and DelDOT can come to an agreement that we will understand and go along with. That we've not changed the present agreement as it stands now. We've done nothing to the present agreement. Does anybody want to make any final comments? Mr. Stevens.
I'd ask that Mr. Simo and DelDOT, while we're going through this process, is it possible to not grant any more permits until we finalize this?
So the best I can say at this time is that we can try to push to the maximum days available, because Delaware code requires that we respond within certain timeframes, or else the permits are automatically deemed approved. So what I can tell you is we can try to maximize those timeframes, but time is of the essence here.
Thank you. Mr. Dede, you had a comment? Your mic is off.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment following up Eric. They are under a shot clock, which is up to about, I believe it's 30 to 60 days, depending on how you interpret it. We have permits now before the town. We also are adopting the shot clock when they applied for our permits. So I believe it's our town's position that our permit process also includes another shot clock. The DelDOT is one permitting process, but it's our position that our permitting process also includes that shot clock. So I just wanted to make that clear for the town commissioners to understand the position that the town administration is taking with permitting.
Thank you, Mr. Dede. Any other comments from the commissioners? Mr. Zolper, your last comment on this subject, and then we'll go to the next agenda item, which is your comments in general.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quick, Mr. Simo, what is the real advantage of the town signing an agreement with DelDOT? Is it just that it gives us sole permitting and just gives the wireless company you go to, or is there something else that I'm missing?
So I would say yes, the sole permitting. So again, what has caused a lot of confusion, at least from what we've all been through, is that there's two entities that are involved with the permitting. So this helps to clarify that DelDOT would have no involvement. I don't know, there could be other items that come out of it too. But I know Jim and I have had a lot of discussions over the past lots of months talking about this, and where DelDOT might have everything we need and end up moving forward with an approval that doesn't get the town what you guys need. And so this would actually help in that way, so that then whatever does get finally approved is meeting all of the requirements of the town in that sole entity, versus it got approved under us, then changed to something else. You know what I mean? It's very confusing.
Hey, this is Ken Feaster speaking. I just wanted to provide just a bit of clarity. A lot of saying sole authority here. I just want to be clear that DelDOT hasn't taken a position that DENREC or some other government entity wouldn't come in and claim that they have some type of authority here. This is really just DelDOT saying DelDOT would be willing to step out of that process. So I just want to provide that.
Mayor,
Mr. Zubel, we'll go to you when I'm going to go to Mr. Persinger first. Mr.
this is
Persinger?
just a, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is kind of a question directed toward the town manager. Would it be fair to say that it's the town's intent to pursue every application that it's faced with? Given the fact that we do have an ordinance and a set of design standards, does the town not intend to review and approve each application for any additional utility pole or small wireless facility that is proposed for the town?
At the end of the streets, of course, anywhere that's not on Route 1, we would apply the town ordinance that have passed, and we'd even look at doing some different town ordinances to help keep the poles off the end of the streets. But right now, the way I understand it is DelDOT approves it, then it comes to us, and we can either approve it or not approve it based on and give them a permit based on our ordinance. So, I mean, we're not really losing anything by having DelDOT in the mix, by permitting it first. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, it's just that, I mean, I think the intent of us approving an ordinance is that you would apply that ordinance and those design standards to each and every application for a small wireless facility that comes along.
We'll definitely do that.
You know, okay, all right, thank you.
All right, we'll go, if everybody's finished, we'll go to the next line item, which is town manager's comments.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So real quick, over the last couple of days, I spoke with Lenny Muscati. He's from JMT, that's Johnson, Marion, and Thompson. They're a wireless company consulting group. I spoke with them. It's something that we should really look into. They can do things. They can help us out with legislation. They can create a permitting process. They can perform technical reviews and provide recommendations to us. They can provide field inspections for us, provide technical and practical insight on proposed changes. And they can also update our website, providing information out to the public. It's something we should look into, I think, at this point. I know originally a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't sure, but after talking to Lenny, and I think Jim has dealt with Lenny on a couple different things, this group represents a couple different towns here in the area and may also work with the state. So I'm just saying that's something that as commissioners we should look into. We have the money to do that in our 2021 budget, but we are given a limited amount of time to make that decision because the end of the fiscal year is on the 21st. Are there any questions about that?
So the company would help the town as far as the small cell wireless legal issues, correct?
That's correct. They would see what Verizon or any other company wants to do in our town, and they would work with us to try to work with the wireless companies, but also to try to give us the best verbiage and that we put into our ordinances and try to get them passed that are reasonable. Of course, you know, talking to Lenny would say, you can't say, you know, we're going to charge the companies, you know, a certain amount of money if they put their poles down at the end of the street. But he said anything that's reasonable, they would help represent us and help shape that verbiage for our ordinances going forward.
And this is the company that helped Bethany and Fenwick Island, is that correct?
They're currently with Bethany. I don't know about Fenwick Island, and I think they're with DelDOT.
Okay, Mr. Stevens.
What is the value or the cost of the contract? Is it per hour?
Anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Zolper.
Also continue on.
Oh, Mr. Persinger had a question. Wait a minute.
Yeah, so given that we're facing the end of the fiscal year, are you suggesting that we schedule a special meeting to address this issue before the end of the year?
If we want to use funding from the 2021, I would strongly suggest that.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Soper, with your report.
Yeah, so over the weekend, it was a big weekend here in Dewey Beach. No major incidents on during the weekend, so glad. Good work by all the business owners, their citizens, and the police department. Also, the lifeguards had their tryouts. They had 9 people try out. 5 were males, 4 were females. Captain Fritchman did a very good job running that on the beach and out at the Coastal Club for the swimming part. We also had our brand new full-time police officer, Dylan Epke, do a great job. He responded to a fire on 200 Jersey Street. When he got there, the fire had spread to 207. He went and checked the residence, make sure nobody was in them at the time, went back to his car, got a fire extinguisher, found the ladder, got up on the roof, was able to extinguish some of the pine needles that were up there until the Rehoboth Fire Company got there. We received a letter from the owner that went to myself and to the mayor thanking us and the Rehoboth Volunteer Fire Company for their quick work and response. Also, we had a second interview with a financial person today. Myself, Jim, Dedes, and Sheena have all interviewed this person. I think we're at a point where we can make a decision. I'll make a decision on hiring this person. We're talking right now with them about pay and how many hours a week. Pending any questions, that's all I have.
Any questions for the town manager? Hearing none, I'll go on. Commissioners' comments, Mr. Bauer.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I'm anxious to see what our town solicitor comes up here for us, and hopefully he's going to write some good, solid language, and perhaps even get help from this this firm that's doing it for other municipalities. So, looking forward to the next steps, and want everybody to know we're trying our best to, try to take control of this thing and represent everybody.
Mr. Jazinski.
You're on mute.
Mr.
There we go. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Jazinski.
I just wanted to make sure. I'm using my phone. I can't really see it. I just wanted to thank, everybody who's been working very hard on this. There's a lot of passion, especially when various citizens get involved. We appreciate their involvement, but there are a lot of passions. And occasionally I heard a few words that, we kind of need to stay away from. I heard someone use the word sellout. Another person kind of said, hey, maybe some of our people aren't being honorable. All of your local elected officials, your state elected officials, your state officials in Del Dot, I think everyone's trying to act honorably and try to do the right thing here in a tough legal situation that starts with federal legislation about what's required to do. So I think it's important that regarding all of us who are trying to serve the public, that you understand we're trying to act in the public's interest, and no one's not being honorable and no one's selling out.
Thank you, sir. Is that all?
Yes.
Mr. Persinger.
Yeah, I would just say that I appreciate everyone's diligence on this particular issue. It's an important issue. We need to continue that. It's important to all of the residents of the town. And as we move forward on that, we need to continue to hear from people. We need to hear from all the various constituencies. We need to know more about what their positions are, and please come forth with as much information as you'd like to share with us, and everything will be considered as we move forward on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Persinger. Is that all?
That's all.
Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, I just want to echo a few of the comments that have already been made. This is something that has been pushed onto us. Isn't something that the citizens have come forward or are not happy about where we are in terms of these wireless poles. I know I'm not happy about it, and we've heard enough about it. I do think it's in our best interest to evaluate and hopefully approve what Mr. Zolper put forth of having a professional who understands how these telecommunication companies work and help us from that process. And I think we should consider that, whether that's in this fiscal budget or next fiscal budget. I do feel that I listened to various comments. I'm not sure that this amendment that we're proposing really gives us any more teeth than we already have based upon the ordinance that's already been put forth. I think that's what Commissioner Persinger said. And Del Dot, thank you for your help on this.
Thank you. Is that it, Mr. Stevens?
That's it.
Thank you, sir. Number one, as mayor, I want to say thank you to Jim Dedes for coming to this meeting today. Jim Dedes had a little bit of a tumble on his bike today, a little bit of a tumble. It was about, I'm going to reveal some of your medical secrets, Mr. Dedes. It was about 26 stitches worth of medical little tumble. And we appreciate all his work. And he's been a major factor in dealing with all these companies now that are coming in on the telephone poles right from the the telecommunication poles right from the very beginning. We're still the town, it was said earlier by another commissioner, and I'll say it again, we're still enforcing our regulations, our ordinance that we passed on small cell telecommunication poles. And we're not backing out of it in any way, shape, or form, no matter whether we stay with Del Dot as part of the process or we are the sole process. So we have not changed anything yet. They're still working on that. And I agree that Mr. Zolper, I appreciate the fact that you're attempting to look at a company that I'll set up a meeting to possibly authorize spending the money, and we'll do it fairly quickly. And I think we need the expert help, even though we've had some expert help from one of the town property owners, we need to have consistent help on our side to fight any improper placement of poles. Other than that, I hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Bauer, second by Stevens.